Welcome to the Information Systems for Business podcast. I'm your host, Craig Van Slyke. The main purpose of the podcast is to augment the book Information Systems for Business: An Experiential Approach by Franz Belanger, Craig Van Slyke, and Rob Crossler. The book is published by Prospect Press. Before we get started, I want to give a few disclaimers. The podcast purposely omits many details in order to get to the high points of each chapter. So listening to the podcast is not a substitute for reading the book. Each episode contains my view of the most important points of each chapter. Your professor may have a different view. The podcast is solely my responsibility, so any errors are on me, not my co-authors, your professors, Prospect Press, or my employer. Enough of the disclaimers, let's get to the good stuff. In this episode, we cover the most important points from Chapter 10, Developing Information Systems. Software errors called bugs can cost organizations and economies literally billions of dollars and in some cases, even lives. The focusing story tells of several serious problems related to software bugs, including a massive electricity blackout, flight interruptions, and vehicle recalls. Even relatively minor bugs can cause serious problems, so it's important to develop software in a way that catches any software errors early in the development process. The purpose of Chapter 10 is to familiarize you with some of the basics of software development, including traditional and more modern software development methodologies. A methodology is just a framework for planning, structuring, and controlling software development projects. The chapter also introduces some important decisions related to software development. Chapter 10 begins with the focusing story, then introduces the project triangle. This is followed by a brief overview of the meaning and purpose of software development methodologies. Next, the traditional software development lifecycle methodology is described in some detail. Then 3 alternatives to this traditional software development lifecycle are described. 2 important decisions related to software development are then covered: the build or buy decision and the outsourcing decision. Open source software is discussed as part of the build or buy decision. The project triangle refers to a tension between time, cost, and quality. Some versions of the project management triangle refer to quality as scope. Improving one of these dimensions will usually have adverse effects on one or both of the other dimensions. So, for example, if you want it quicker, it's going to cost more and perhaps quality will suffer, or you'll have to reduce your scope. Software development methodologies are frameworks for planning, structuring, and controlling software development projects. Methodologies provide discipline to the development process by defining processes, roles, and deliverables. One example of a software development methodology is the traditional System Development Lifecycle, or SDLC, which is sometimes called the waterfall method. Check out Figure 10.1 to see why. There are many versions of the SDLC. The one in the book consists of 6 phases. Planning, which involves setting the overall goal and scope of the system and determining the project's feasibility. There are several types of feasibility, including technical, economic, organizational, legal, and ethical. The goal of the requirements phase is to determine and document the functions the system should perform, along with the level of performance that the system should be able to deliver. Functional requirements concern what the system should do, and non-functional requirements are related to constraints on the system. The design phase is intended to describe in detail how the system will meet the requirements. In the development phase, the system is actually built. The implementation phase involves putting the system into operation. Finally, the maintenance phase is all about making sure that the system operates properly in a way that meets current needs. This may involve fixing problems and perhaps adding functions or taking advantage of new technologies. There are many alternatives to the SDLC, including prototyping, Rapid Application Development, or RAD, and DevOps. You can check out the book to read more about these. As the name implies, the build or buy decision concerns whether an organization should create software from scratch or purchase commercial off-the-shelf software. Hybrid approaches are often used. Hybrid approaches involve using commercial software as components in a larger system or customizing commercial software. Custom-built software and commercial software vary in the degree of customization that can be done, development and implementation costs, the length of time needed to implement the software, the fit with existing business processes, and the fit with other requirements. Open source software is software that allows users to access the human-readable form of software, which is called the source code. This allows customization. Most organizations use some open source software for some things. You probably do too if you use Android or Firefox. Outsourcing occurs when an organization turns to an outside firm to provide IT services that used to be provided internally. There are several outsourcing models, including full outsourcing, process-based outsourcing, personnel outsourcing, project-based outsourcing, and application outsourcing. Making the decision to outsource is complex and risky, but there are a lot of benefits to outsourcing. So many organizations outsource at least some of their IT function. Well, that's all for Chapter 10. Some of the material in this chapter is kind of detailed and technical, so be sure to read the chapter. Yes, I know, I only mentioned that twice here, so you should be happy. All right, that's it for now. See you next time. Thank you. Okay, that's it for this episode. Remember that you still need to read the chapter since the book has much more detail. Have I mentioned that yet? Fortunately, we, the co-authors, worked really hard to keep the chapters short and to the point, so the reading shouldn't be too bad. Talk to you next time.